What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the College Sports Connection podcast, where Double A, Alex, and AJ host the Mid-American Conference Best.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the College Sports Connection podcast. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. Joining me, as always, it's AJ the Guru.
What's going on, everybody?
AJ, welcome back. We are now officially in bowl season. The first bowl game kicks off this weekend, and it starts with a MAC team, because why else wouldn't it? And we have three great bowl games here in this first week of the bowl season, and we're going to be talking about those tonight. We've got 6 MAC teams who qualified for bowl games: Miami, Ohio, Eastern Michigan, Toledo, Bowling Green, Buffalo, and Ohio. Let's just dive into this first one here. Miami versus UAB in the Hometown Lenders Bahamas Bowl. This one should be a good one.
Absolutely. This is a bowl game I can't keep track of because I've had so many different sponsorships over the years. I remember back in the day with the Popeyes Bowl, because that was like the original one back in 2014.
Yep.
And what I did was I kind of broke down some of the games. As I mentioned, it's been since 2014 the game has been played. The first inaugural game was Western Kentucky versus Central Michigan. A lot of these games have actually been fairly close. Western Kentucky won that 49-48. Now in 15, Western Michigan, Middle Tennessee State played. Western Michigan won that 45-31. 2016, Old Dominion and Eastern played. Old Dominion 24-20. 2017, Ohio and UAB. OU won 41-6. That was the largest win in the history of the bowl here up to date. 2018, FIU versus Toledo. FIU won that 35-32. 2019, Buffalo versus Charlotte. Buffalo won that 31-9. Obviously, 2020, COVID didn't happen. 2021, Middle Tennessee State and Toledo, 31-24. Toledo has been in this bowl game twice, and they're 0-2. The MAC has played in this game 7 times and are 3-4 overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost 50%. You know, Miami's going to have an opportunity to get the MAC back to 50% in this bowl game. But I mean, they've got a good one here against UAB, right? So we've got Miami taking on UAB, and this is a UAB squad who, when I was kind of doing some looking, their season was 6-6. They finished 4th in Conference USA, but they had some interesting games. They had a close loss at Liberty, 21-14, a loss at Rice, 28-24, a loss at Western Kentucky, 20-17, a loss at Florida Atlantic, 24-17, and then a loss at LSU, 41-10. So all their losses came on the road. They went undefeated at home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, they've got some great players. Dylan Hopkins, their starting quarterback, can absolutely sling the ball when he gets the opportunity, but it looks like they play a lot of catch up in games. Just kind of looking at some of these scores here, that they're playing from behind to try to come back and win. This is going to be an interesting one. Obviously, we saw Miami, Ohio clinch this game against Ball State at the end of the MAC regular season. UAB's got some firepower. They are the home team. This one kicks off on 11:30 a.m. on Friday, December 16th on ESPN. I don't know. What are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, this one's going to be, obviously, they're both 6-6 on the year. And you kind of look at the overall numbers, and it's not too impressive from either squad. Miami of Ohio has had some transitions at quarterback with Smith, and then Gabbert was supposed to come back. Then he's going to transfer. Now he's coming back. So this is a whole fiasco. Is he eligible to play this game though?
I think his injury. I think he's like injured, so he's not. I think when he was put on IR or whatever, I think he's done for the year regardless. Gotcha. Which is why he transferred out, because, hey, I'm injured. I can't play the bowl game. So I don't think he's eligible. He very well may be. I don't actually know. I don't believe he is.
Right. So yeah, the over under for this game is 45, and you kind of look at the points per game. Miami 20.3 to UAB's 30.6. The UAB gives up a lot of yards, though. They give up
They
a lot
give
of
up a
yards,
boatload of yards.
a lot of rushing yards. They're almost, gosh, a lot of yards. Almost 170 through the air. Or excuse me, 170 on the ground, 100, almost 200 through the air.
Mm-hmm.
And Miami still hasn't found that rhythm yet, I don't think, when it comes to especially quarterback play. We saw Smith play against we saw Smith play against Cincinnati.
Yep.
And he can move the ball, and he has an all-MAC receiver, Matt Kippenhammer, who was one of my players to watch this year.
Sure.
Which was really excited about him. But he's going to have to be very decisive on his reads and who he throws it to in order for him to win this game.
Well, and I think you talked about Avion Smith a little bit here. He's also their leading rusher. He has 101 carries for 503 yards. So he's averaging 5 yards a carry. He does have 6 scores on the ground. And I think that that's going to be kind of that extra element that Miami's going to need and they're going to really rely on. Miami's got a pretty good defense.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, they allow 22 points a game, but I mean, their yards total, they're much better on the ground. Stopping the ground game than they are through the air. They're giving up 236 yards a game through the air. But when your defense is only giving up 22.5 points a game and you had awful games against Cincinnati, you had a loss or a win against Kent State where you gave up 24. Actually, just looking at their schedule, they didn't give up more than 37 and 38. More than 3 times. In the first one, it was 37-13 against Kentucky at Kentucky. Brett Gabbert got hurt in that game. Cincinnati, 38-17 down in Cincinnati. And then the loss to Ohio, 37-21. But other than that, nobody scored more than 24 on them. So this is a tough defense. This is a defense that's going to go after it and going to really make you work for it. It's just the offense is, like you mentioned, kind of figuring out what they're trying to do. So I think that this is going to be a good one for Miami, a good non-conference opponent. UAB, who revived their program in the last decade, a program that didn't exist, right? This is a program that they shut their doors after I think it was almost a decade ago. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, I don't think it was.
They shut their doors a while ago,
sooner than that.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, but I remember when they revived themselves, and that was a whole thing. But I think you're right. You're talking about standout guys. Hippenhammer is going to be absolutely critical in this ball game. This is a guy who, when targeted, he can do things. This year he has 52 catches, 8 touchdowns, 726 yards. This is their leading receiver. This is their stud receiver compared to Trey Shropshire for UAB, 35 catches, 740 yards, only 5 scores. So this is a guy that they're going to really rely on offensively. And Avion Smith's going to have to make sure that his reads are locked in. Avion, he's a young guy, young kid. I've got confidence in him. ESPN matchup predictor does not have confidence in the RedHawks, giving UAB a 76.7% chance of winning this game.
Mm-hmm.
Where's your mind on that?
I thought that was interesting. I really
Spread's
did.
11 points.
11 points, yeah.
Wow.
And UAB shut down in 2014. So
okay, and they came back in 17?
16 or 17, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, this is a little harder game to predict. The simple fact that that's a long ways away from home, especially from Oxford down to the Bahamas. So I don't know Miami's travel schedule. I don't know when they plan on getting there and things like that. But nevertheless, I think this is a team that the predictor is so much in favor of UAB for the simple fact of the quarterback play.
Sure.
If Gabbert was in there, it'd be the entire opposite. But he's not. So, how does Coach Martin get these guys ready? We've seen him over the years over the past couple of years. We talked to him this past season. He'll have this RedHawks team ready to go.
Sure. No, I mean, it'll be an interesting one. Like I said, I'm excited. I think UAB takes it. Just because they are averaging more points a game. They are giving up a lot of yards. They are averaging more points a game. Defensively, they're giving up about the same amount as Miami. And I think Avion Smith, as good as he is, he's still getting his sea legs under him. He did it all season. Brett Gabbert came back a little bit in the middle of the season, got taken out again. So it's just I think, these bowl practices are helping. They're down there. It's the warm weather. They're getting an opportunity to really kind of unload and unwind a little bit. I do see a UAB victory here. I think the spread of 11 points is a little insane. I think that this is going to come down to a one-score game. I don't think it's going to be a multi-score game.
Right.
So I'm going to go UAB 31-26.
I'm going to go UAB also. I think that let's have too much power on that offensive side. I'm going to go UAB 28-17.
28-17. So you're taking the spread.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. That's going to wrap it up for our hometown lenders Bahamas Bowl. You talked about the sponsors for that one. I've got the jersey here for the former Toledo player when it was the Makers Wanted Bahamas Bowl. So it's like you said, we've seen a few different title sponsors for this game, but
was that 2018? I'm assuming.
Yeah, that was the last year for Reggie Gilliam, in his last bowl game jersey.
Gotcha.
But moving on to next week, kicking off on Tuesday, December 20th, Eastern Michigan versus San Jose State, famous Idaho Potato Bowl. This one's going to be fun.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Macs had 11 appearances in this bowl game. They're 4-7 on the year, or in this bowl. I won't go through everybody like I did last time. There's 11 games, but teams with multiple appearances, OU they're 2-0, and Western they are 0-2 in this bowl game. The last one was the game last year, which was I remember watching this game at the gym at Wyoming versus Kent State, where Wyoming won 52-38. That was a wild one.
That was a wild, high-powered offensive game. Yeah, so I mean that was one of those games that if you're a fan, you love the offense. You don't like the outcome if you're Kent State, but you love the offense. This one, I think this one's going to be much more of a defensive game.
Yeah, it really will be. You look at Eastern this year. We've been a fan of their defense. They've had 3 All-Americans this year?
2 or 3, yeah. They looked really good this year.
They did, and we saw them live against Buffalo. And Jose Ramirez has had a phenomenal year. He's the guy you'll see play on Sundays. But Coach Creighton, his name's been kind of tossed around for bigger opportunities, bigger jobs. As obviously a lot of those bigger jobs have been taken up, but there's still a few out there. So I think this would be a really big one for him, and this could be a signature win for that program too, who's been hurting for one for a while. Well, at least they got a signature bowl win. We'll put it that way, because they had the big win this year at Arizona State.
Signature bowl win, and historically, Eastern Michigan has not been a championship caliber team. This year, they were 3 points away from making a trip to Detroit.
Yeah,
as they lost the tiebreaker with Toledo in the MAC West. But this is a Eastern Michigan team. This is the first time they've won 8 games since their last MAC championship in 1987.
Which is wild to think too.
So it's a long time coming.
They've had some really good players and quarterbacks, not just quarterbacks, but players in general come through that program.
Oh yeah. And I mean, you talk about guys who are coming in through that program right now. Taylor Powell this year, a little bit hit or miss, but you mentioned the defense has been what's kind of held them together. Samson Evans, 1,000-yard rusher this year, 224 carries, 13 rushing touchdown. Tanner New, their receiver, just out here absolutely crushing it. 600 receiving yards, 9 scores. This is an Eastern offense that when they're on, they're on.
Right.
When they're off,
just a matter of
they're off.
Just a matter of keeping them, on.
Right.
Because we've seen them play extremely well. Then they went out to Arizona, won that game, and they came back. I think laid an egg the following week.
Yeah, they lost to Buffalo 50-31 at home. The big one, the one that I circle if I'm if I'm San Jose State and that coaching staff, I look at their game against Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
They lost to Northern Illinois at Eastern Michigan 39-10.
Mm-hmm.
Northern Illinois finished dead last in the MAC West. So there was really no excuse for that loss, other than they just came out and they laid an egg.
Right.
They lost a close one to Toledo, like I mentioned, 27-24. But then they ripped off 3 straight to get to an 8-win season, including wins over Akron, Kent State, and Central Michigan. So I mean, this is a program who, like I said, when they're on, they're really on.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at their losses, when they lose, they lose when Taylor Powell is held under 200 passing yards.
Yeah.
Against Buffalo, he had 190. Against Northern Illinois, 197. Against Toledo, 61. And I had to check that because I'm like, that can't be right.
That can't be right.
61
yeah.
passing yards. But in their wins, Taylor Powell's had 315, 266, 317, 271. Like, I mean, so it's just he's got a lot of talent, and he's got a lot of wide receivers out here who can make things happen. San Jose State on the other side, this is a team that, I mean, they're hungry for a bowl win as well, right?
Sure.
They lost to Ball State a couple years ago in the Arizona Bowl in 2020.
Yeah, and San Jose State's one of those teams who just really do enjoy playing Mid-American Conference schools. It seems like every year somebody's traveling out there, or we are playing them in a bowl game, like you mentioned in the Barstool Bowl, and Ball State beat them for their first ever bowl win. So this should be an interesting one. San Jose State's one of those teams that they're, again, when they're on, but when they're off, they're rough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this could be a really interesting one. Playing here out in the Mountain West towards me, there's going to be probably a little more, I guess, more San Jose State fans, obviously, since it's a little closer. But hopefully Western can travel out there well, or Eastern, excuse me, and make that day a good one.
Yeah, I think so. Matchup predictor has it 66.5% in favor of San Jose State, over under 54.5, and the spread is 3.5 points. What are your take on those numbers?
I think I do like San Jose State. I don't know, just the inconsistency with Eastern this year has really kind of bothered me. Like I said, when they're on, they're on, but when they're off, they're off. They've, not being so close to going to Detroit and not getting there, having an 8-win season, putting in all that work. I don't know if that's going to hinder a program or not. I don't know if that's going to bother some guys knowing that they were so close. But there's no shame in going to the Idaho Potato Bowl because it is pretty cool. We've seen some cool things happen there over the years.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I do like San Jose State in this one. What did you say the spread was?
The spread is 3.5 points.
3.5 points. And over, I mean, I'm taking the under. I'll probably take the under in a lot of these games, honestly. But I think I can see this one being a 21-13 type game.
Oh wow, that low. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I like San Jose State as well in this one. To me, it's really going to depend on which Eastern offense shows up.
Mm-hmm.
If it's the offense that showed up against Northern Illinois, San Jose State runs away with this one. If it's the offense that shows up against offense and defense that showed up against Arizona State, I think I'm going to take Eastern. But I do think that part of that inconsistency is why they are here at 8-4. So that being said, I am also going to take San Jose State. I see this one being a little bit more high scoring affair, and I'm going to go San Jose State 35, EMU 28. So it's going to be a 1-score game, but the spread's going to be met.
On to the final bowl game of the weekend.
This one's the one I'm excited about most.
Yes.
The newly crowned MAC champion Toledo Rockets sitting at 8-5, taking on Liberty at 8-4 in the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl. This is going to be a fun one. It's the same day, December 20th. This one kicks off at 7:30 over on ESPN. Matchup predictor has this about as even as you could possibly make it. 49.9% in favor of Toledo, 50.1% in favor of Liberty. What do you think?
This one's going to be interesting. Obviously, Liberty just lost their head coach, Hugh Freeze, to Auburn. Um, he had that program rolling for a number of years. McCandless coming off a great MAC championship, a much needed MAC championship. He and that program needed that desperately, and of course, you were there to witness it, which is really cool. Um, so I really think this is a good matchup for Toledo. You were on a Liberty podcast the other day
Mm-hmm.
talking a little bit about it. I haven't listened to it yet. What'd you guys talk about?
I
Give us
mean, we
a
just talked about,
synopsis.
players to watch for in this game. A big shout to let me make sure I get their name right here. But a big shout out to these guys over there at the Fan the Flame Football Podcast. It's a Liberty fan podcast. They had me on to talk Toledo and what Toledo brings to the table in this game. Just talked about playmakers that Toledo has on really both sides of the ball. Toledo's Quinyon Mitchell, who leads the country in pass deflections at 19, which is impressive. Had 4 picks against Northern Illinois, 2 returned for touchdowns, has 5 picks on the year. Was just recently named AP All-American. Was actually named AP All-American today. He was named third team All-American for another media outlet. So the honors are racking up for these Toledo players, and deservedly so. Obviously the season a little bit more tumultuous, a little bit more up and down than they wanted. But I think now you get a healthy DeQuan Finn back, who on the season has 2,100 passing yards, 22 touchdowns. Jaquez Stewart is the leading rusher. Jerwan Newton out here absolutely crushing it. So I think despite going into the MAC championship on a 2-game losing streak, Toledo wins that game and they come out with a lot of confidence. There was a lot of talk going into that game that, depending on what happened, that very well may have been Jason Candle's final game. And obviously, big hats off, congrats to him and the team for winning the MAC championship. But I think that now fan expectation is, well, a 9-win season's right in our grasp. We win this, we're at 9 wins. And you can't really ask for much more than that, especially at this point after losing games Toledo maybe shouldn't have lost. I do think we got to see what a complete game looks like out of Toledo in the MAC championship. And if they can play that way again against Liberty, I think Toledo takes this one home.
I think so too. And we talk a lot about too the breaking between the final game of the season and the bowl game. And I don't think anybody's going to benefit more from that break than DeQuan Finn, having kind of limped into the MAC championship, not knowing if he was going to play until an hour before kickoff, if that.
Yeah. Well, at least it wasn't public knowledge.
At least public knowledge, right? And so I don't think there's going to be anybody who benefits more than him when it comes to this game, and that's why I think Toledo wins this.
Yeah, I mean his escapability gives him that kind of get out of jail free card that Coach Candle talked to us about at media day, and how it's really nice having that in his back pocket. And even DeQuan Finn at the MAC championship wasn't 100%. So getting him at 100% for this bowl game is going to be pretty special, I think.
Mm-hmm. And here in the Boca Raton Bowl, we've only had a couple of MAC schools in it, Marshall and NIU back in 2014, where Marshall won that 52-23. In 2015, Toledo, they beat a 23 ranked Temple. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that was Matt Rule's Temple.
I believe it was Matt Rule's Temple, but that was also Jason Candle's first game as Toledo's head coach.
First game as head coach. That's right. Toledo won that 32-17. And then 2017, Florida Atlantic played Akron. FAU won that 50-3. And then UAB versus Northern Illinois in 2018, where UAB won that 37-13. There's only 2 teams, or only 2 schools here who have played this bowl multiple times, and that's NIU, and they are 0-2.
Well, there you go. There's some history. The over-under is 54, and the spread is 5 points. I think there's a pretty even matchup, but I obviously the matchup predictor has it in favor of Liberty. Where's your mind? Where's your headspace on this?
I like Toledo in this one. I think losing your head coach right before bowl season's tough for no matter who you are. So I really like Toledo, but the only reason I like him is because they have a healthy DeQuan Finn.
Mm-hmm. I like that pick. For me, after watching DeQuan Finn all season long, just like we have. I think that when he's on, he's one of the best players in college football. I mean, we
We
saw
saw him
that
live at
on
Ohio
display
State.
at
Yeah.
Ohio State. DeQuan Finn dazzled the country. The defense, really struggled in that game, obviously. A 77-21 loss, but DeQuan Finn threw 3 touchdowns on an Ohio State defense that up until like week 7 didn't give up more points than that to anybody else. So I mean, the Toledo offense, when DeQuan Finn is on, can really go out and they can do some damage.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Absolutely. I
like
think
Toledo in this one.
I do too. I think that their defenses have gotten tougher here too because they were able to hold OU to what was it 10 points last or
7. They held them to
7?
7 points, 1
That's right. So
touchdown.
17-10. That's right.
Yeah.
So in OU, even though they were missing Curtis Rourke, they still had talent on that offensive side. They were able to hold them to 7 points.
Plenty of talent on that offensive side, and the reason that I look at what Toledo did to OU is, yes, you've got a young quarterback, CJ Harris, stepping in to fill in for Curtis Rourke, but I really do think that CJ Harris has a boatload of talent because we saw him torch Bowling Green the week after Toledo lost to Bowling Green.
Mm-hmm.
He went out and torched Bowling Green. Something like 38-14 was the final to send Ohio to the MAC championship. So for me, it was very much it's very clear that OU, while they are a great team, when Toledo's on, Toledo is on.
Absolutely.
So I think, obviously the rest period for both of these squads is big. Toledo has played a game more recently as Liberty as an independent. So I think having the MAC championship, the week of practice is there, and then the extra week and a half, 2 weeks of practices for the bowl game gives Toledo a little bit more of an edge. You mentioned the loss of the head coach for Liberty. I think that's a valid point. I'm going to go Toledo. I like Toledo. I'm going to go 28-10.
All right. I'm going to go 24-14.
24-14. Okay, cool. That works. That's going to wrap it up for our first 3 bowl games of the bowl season. Next week, we'll be bringing you our Quick Lane Bowl, the Camilla Bowl, and the Barstool Arizona Bowl, where we have Bowling Green, New Mexico, and Detroit, Georgia Southern and Buffalo in Montgomery, Alabama, and Ohio and Wyoming out in Tucson, Arizona. So those are all going to be good. But this first week of bowl games, I'm excited. I'm really glad bowl season's here.
Absolutely. I got here really fast too. It doesn't seem that long ago. Week 3, we were in Columbus covering Ohio State, Toledo. Now here we are getting ready to cover bowl games. But before we wind things down here, I do want to talk about, though, this past weekend, I was at Army Navy.
Sure, go for it.
Talk about a freaking experience that was. This was the first time in 123 years the game went into overtime, let alone double overtime. I was able to watch the Air Force earlier on this year run the option, and watching these two teams run it against each other was just a work of art. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, well, so I was watching. I was watching the box score at halftime because I knew you were there. Of course, there were 2 pass attempts in the first
something
half,
like that. Yeah, and later on they had a passing touchdown. Our Navy did, which was wild.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. I mean, the whole atmosphere. Philadelphia is an incredible city. I had never been. I have friends who go to the Army Navy game every year, and he said Philly's the best place to see it, and I can understand why.
sure.
People were great. The atmosphere was awesome. It was cool when you walk into Lincoln Financial Field. There's military equipment sitting right there. You can take a picture with and check out. They had a tent with 123-year history. I bought a program that breaks down every game ever played, which was cool. Just like the flyovers, the Army had a Chinook, 2 Apaches, and a Black Hawk flyover. Navy had 3 or 4 F-18 Super Hornets flyover. Mark Wahlberg was there on the field. And what else they do? The Secretary of the Navy was down there. It was a who's who of people, and it was just unbelievable. Of course, I'm a Navy fan. So my sister-in-law goes to school. She's on the dance team there, so it only made sense. Because she was on the field, so it was kind of cool talking to her a little bit about what it was like down there. So it just means next year I have to get passes for it at Foxborough.
There you go.
Which would be ideal. but just unbelievable. I mean, on TV, the game wasn't sexy by any means, but
No.
like in person, it was awesome. But that's the thing too about that game is it's not going to be sexy. I mean, they're both running the same offense, and there's going to be. I took the over under. I took the 5 or under 5 passing. I think that probably hit. But yeah, Navy had a late touchdown. That was a pass. The receiver was wide open because nobody expected them to throw.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it went into double overtime. And Navy was, I mean, a fingertip away from blocking the winning field goal. But it was cool seeing all of the cadets or Army cadets rush the field, and both of them sing their alma maters in front of their respected sides. And then obviously Ken Niamnatalolo, Navy's coach, was fired the next day after 15 years.
Yep.
I think he had gone like, what did they say? He's lost 5 of the last 7, I believe, after running Army for years.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I was talking to my father-in-law. I go, look, if he loses this job, he's probably gone. And 24 hours later,
Well,
he's
there you
gone.
go. Yeah.
And so that has to be a hard job to fill
Yeah, probably. I
because
mean,
you're limited
yeah,
on
you
what
get limited
happened.
on your recruiting and all that. But
Extreme limited recruiting, and then you're gonna, no matter who you are, you're gonna be running that offense. And they don't redshirt kids. COVID really hurt them because they lost a bunch of kids because they couldn't redshirt.
right.
So that was just a fiasco there for a little while. But talk about an incredible game. If you get the chance to do it, I highly recommend it. It was a bucket list item for me. But if you ever come across tickets or you get the opportunity to do it, drop what you're doing that weekend and do it. It's incredible.
There you go. Well, that's cool, man. No, I'm glad you got that
So
experience for sure.
we were able to see all 3 Surface Academies play in person this
Well,
year,
you
which
were.
is
I didn't see any
I
of them.
was the podcast was.
Right.
But nevertheless, that was really cool to see. Now you'll be out here next year for an Air Force game. So
No, that'll be really cool. But well, cool guys. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate all the love and support. We are inching closer to 1,600 followers on Twitter, which is pretty unbelievable. I think a year ago we were hoping to hit our first 1,000, and now we're almost to 1,600. So we're cruising right along. Thanks to you guys for the love and support. We really appreciate it. Yeah, we got some great content coming once we start transitioning into basketball season. Got a couple interviews lined up here, and
we're doing
a
some
couple
hockey
other
too.
surprises in store.
Got some hockey too. Also, we got Miami of Ohio. I'll be doing up in Denver,
Yep.
and then at Western Michigan at Colorado College here in Colorado Springs.
Yeah, so we've got a pretty full schedule with things to come, and we're excited to bring you guys content. It's going to be a lot of fun here as we transition out of fall sports and into our winter seasons with basketball and the aforementioned hockey, of course. So,
Absolutely,
AJ, anything else you wanted to throw out there tonight?
that's it for me.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
See ya.